Building a software synthesizer for desktop, and we're using the Juice framework. And the last couple of weeks as a team, we went through these tutorials from the Audio Programmer YouTube channel to get us started with using the framework. And to start the week, I reviewed that and I built my own little throwaway project, which will play, if I enter a MIDI note from the keyboard, it will play a sine wave in that frequency. And then I wanted to build a delayed effect this week. So to build a delay effect, I used this book, Designing Audio Effect Plugins in C++ by Will Perkle. And from that delay chapter, I got a couple diagrams and some useful information on what to use. And so to build a delay, you have essentially the Z here represents a circular buffer, which you could think of as an array, and I made mine like 2 seconds long, and that way I can store what sound I'm playing right now, and then look back in history to see a note I played before, and then maybe like add part of that to the note I'm playing so I could get an echo effect. So this first diagram is a simple stereo delay, and you get some input. Some of it goes to the dry line here, and that means like just the note I played, and there's a certain percentage of it that'll go directly to the output, so that's more pronounced. And then I'll add that with some feedback, which comes from the circular buffer, and that's just like a percentage of the note that I've played previously, however long back I want. I'll store that back into my circular buffer so that things will kind of decay over time. And I add a certain percentage of my wet output, so that's my affected output, to the dry. So together they make my final output. So left and right here just means like different left and right audio outputs. I also added a ping pong delay to make it more bouncy, and what that requires is my feedback notes and inputs, they're flipping back and forth between, so instead of my wet going directly to, or the feedback note going directly to the same output, is flipping and being added to the opposite side, so that like you get this kind of bouncing effect. And I also added some tap delay to it, and this is an example of a tap delay where in addition to what we already have, where there's a long feedback delay being added to my output, I also have a couple smaller ones that don't get added back to the circular buffer, because if they did, it'd be really noisy. But it makes this little more bouncier, and that's just going back in history a couple shorter times, so I get like a delay that's going on maybe like 1 second, half second, and quarter second coming back to me. So my code has a class for the delay effect. I add to that sine wave coming out. I have a buffer storing the left and right outputs, because those are going to be different. And then here is where I go back to my circular buffer and pull out, like, I have a control for how far back I'm looking in time for my delay, as well as a couple taps here for left and right. And then I'm adding back into my circular buffer my my input plus some percentage of the long delay that I want to store as feedback. So that's going to be something that keeps playing and decaying over time. And then I'm sending to my output my sample that I've stored into what's already there, plus all my feedback, or all my echo and delays in there. And then I flush the buffer every time the delays the number of delay samples changes, because otherwise it gets this weird artifacting in sound. Okay, so I already have this open. So without any delay, this is how my output sounds. And then if I add some more, hopefully you can hear some of that. You can hear a little bit of delay going on there. So that's what I got so far for a delay.